The Bridgewater Triangle. Paranormal investigators.
Welcome back, ghouls and ghoulettes, to the channel. And if you haven't yet subscribed, make sure to do so. And please, give this video a like, because tonight I have an interesting show. How many of you out there can remember a famous quote from a movie, or even recall an event that happened in your life? Now, what if I told you that quote was never said, and that event never took place? You would say I'm crazy, or am I? This is known as the Mandela effect. So, the Mandela effect started when everyone was shocked to learn that African President Nelson Mandela died in his home in the year 2013. However, so many of us remember him dying in prison in the 1980s. But why do we all share the same false memory? Is there a strange phenomena at play? Many believe the Mandela effect is caused by a glitch in the Matrix and we're all just living in a simulation. While others believe CERN, a particle collider based in Switzerland, is causing our realm to join with another timeline of ours, where these memories are based in a parallel universe. So let's dive right into my most fascinating Mandela effects that I find very strange. Number 1. How many of you can remember sitting down for breakfast in the morning, eating a bowl of Fruit Loops? Can you remember the cereal box distinctively? We all remember the mascot, Toucan Sam, but look at the spelling of Fruit Loops. If you remember it spelled F-R-U-I-T, as in an actual fruit, well, you're wrong. It was always spelled F-R-O-O-T, with the fruit cereal as the double O's. Shocking, right? Speaking of cereal, next up on the list was, and still is, one of my favorite breakfast cereals. But how many remember the name Captain Crunch? I know I do. But even I was shocked to learn that this Quaker Oats cereal was always called Cap'n Crunch, which makes no sense at all. I mean, think about it. It doesn't even fit the whole breakfast theme that's on the box. I mean, what is the captain, a fug now? Yo, I'm gonna come and pop a cap in your ass. Next up, who remembers that fun-loving show based in the era of drive-in movies and hula hoops? That's right, Happy Days. Now, who could forget that super cool guy that all the guys wanted to be like and all the women wanted to be with? The Fonz. But what was so distinct about Fonzie, besides for his hair? Was it his black leather jacket? Well, if you remember his jacket being black, then you're sadly mistaken. No, you're not colorblind. Fonzie's jacket was always the color brown. Now, going back to the 1950s, everyone remembers I Love Lucy. And who can forget Lucy's husband, Ricky Ricardo's famous line, "Lucy, you have some splaining to do." It was a classic line with the word explaining mispronounced due to his accent. Well, if you remember that catchy phrase, then you will be shocked to learn that Ricky Ricardo never said that in any of the I Love Lucy episodes. He sometimes said, "Splain that," or "How do you splain that?" And another time, he actually pronounced the word explain properly.
What is all this? Lucy, explain.
Yes, sir.
I want an explanation.
And speaking of catchy phrases, who remembers the 1980s TV show, The A-Team, with Mr. T's famous line, "I pity the fool"? Well, you remember incorrectly. Mr. T never used that classic phrase we all quoted growing up. And if that didn't shock you, does this van look familiar? Well, it shouldn't, because the van was never all black with a red stripe. It was black and gray with a red stripe. And while we are on the topic of 1980s classics, who remembers Tom Cruise in Risky Business? All the girls loved the scene when Tom Cruise danced in his t-shirt and tighty-whities to Bob Seger's old-time rock and roll. But think real hard. Do you remember him wearing sunglasses? And what color was his shirt? If you said he was wearing a white shirt with sunglasses, then you're not a fan like you thought. Tom Cruise never had sunglasses on, and he was wearing a pink shirt. But that classic skit was used in other TV shows, so how can this be that we all share the same memory? Before you go and watch the movie on Netflix, I have some splaining to do. Get it? Get what I just did there? Anyway, on the movie cover and in other scenes, Tom Cruise did wear sunglasses. So that could be the reason why we are all mistaken the glasses to be worn in the dance scene. And when you watched this movie back in the day, the old CRT TVs or picture tube TVs phosphors might have emitted some light pinks as the color white. But again, that's just a theory. So Phil Collins released his smash hit In the Air Tonight in 1981. But take a moment and try humming the song. Do you have it stuck in your head now? And do you remember the lyrics as followed? Well, I've been waiting for this moment for all my life. Hold on, hold on. Well, those are actually not the lyrics. The song is sung, well, I've been waiting for this moment for all my life. Oh Lord, oh Lord. But do you remember it as hold on? I know I do. Now, remember this 1999 pop song, Oops, I Did It Again? Does this image from the music video look right? For many it does. We all remember Britney Spears wearing a headset, but if you go back and watch the music video, you'll see that she never wore a headset. So what happened to Britney's headset? I know I remember her wearing one. So growing up, who could forget that cute little Disney character, Mickey Mouse? But let's go back when he first appeared in the film Steamboat Willie. Is there something missing? That's right, his suspenders. But it turns out they are not absent after all. Mickey Mouse never had suspenders. Now, I can't leave out everyone's favorite Mandela effect of all time, Shazam. Everyone who's a millennial seems to remember watching this movie as a kid in the 90s, starring Sinbad, who played a genie. But your childhood isn't all that cool, because this movie never existed. Sinbad himself even denied starring in this film, stating, "We all must be smoking crack if we think otherwise." But so many can remember pulling this movie off the shelf at the video stores to rent it, and no one can seem to recall details of this movie. Some are even under the impression that Jonathan Brandis played the kid who found the lamp. But if this movie never existed, then why the false memory? Well, if you remember correctly, Sinbad appeared on the Nickelodeon show All That, playing the character Sinboo, who was dressed like a genie, giving us this false memory. And we could all be confusing the name Shazam with the 1996 movie Kazam, starring Shaquille O'Neal, who played a genie. Now, coming all the way straight from Kansas is Dorothy and her dog Toto in The Wizard of Oz. Remember the scene when the Wicked Witch of the West sent out her monkeys to capture Dorothy? What was the command that she gave them? Can you remember? Are you remembering the witch saying, "Fly, my little pretties, fly"? Well, I remember that too. But it turns out, she never said that. She only said, "Fly, fly." Is it just me, or do these Mandela effects keep getting weirder? Now let's go back to the Bible days and turn to the book of Genesis. Adam and Eve were in the Garden of Eden, and they were both told not to eat from the tree of knowledge. But what was the fruit that Eve convinced Adam to eat? It was an apple, right? We all remember hearing about it in church or from that one friend who had Bible study. But it turns out even the good book has a Mandela effect. It never actually stated what type of fruit. It could have been bananas, blueberries, or even a mango. The only thing it says in the Bible is Adam and Eve ate the forbidden fruit from the tree of knowledge. Remember this legendary George Lucas film, Star Wars? Try and remember the color scheme of C-3PO. Can you remember him being all gold? But what if I told you he has always had a silver leg? I don't remember his leg being silver, do you? And what about Darth Vader's classic line, "Luke, I am your father"? But the actual line is, "No, I am your father." Now, even James Earl Jones himself, who voiced the character of Darth Vader, repeated this phrase in many of his interviews. So what's going on?
I'll never join you! If you only knew the power of the dark side.
When I first saw the dialogue that said, "Luke, I am your father," I said to myself, he's lying. I wonder how they're going to play that lie out.
There is only one logical explanation behind it, And hear me out. Star Wars was remastered and re-released into theaters in 1997 with some new special effects. One of these new effects could have been C-3PO's silver leg, and we just didn't notice it until we started watching in HD and 4K, which brings me back to my picture tube TV theory with certain lights being emitted. There was a lot of changes that George Lucas wanted to make to the film that he didn't do originally. So my own theory is that they did away with the classic Luke, I am your father, because it doesn't make Darth Vader seem very threatening. It actually shows his softer side, acknowledging his son by his name. So replacing it with a simple, no, I am your father, is very blunt, direct, and right to the point. It shows that Darth Vader's not screwing around in the Death Star, having a Hallmark moment. Now this is interesting. While researching James Earl Jones at the time of making this video, I learned of another Mandela effect. And it turns out James Earl Jones is still alive, living at the age of 93 years old. What gives? I thought he was dead, and according to the Reddit comments, many others believe that he had passed away a while ago as well. In fact, didn't he die in the middle of filming Coming to America Part 2? I could have sworn in the movie it said, in loving memory of James Earl Jones. And that would be why you never see him and Akeem played by Eddie Murphy in the same frame. All you see is bad scene splices when the two were conversating. Heck, they even killed off his character in the movie after his passing in real life. Well, so we all thought. Now this next Mandela effect really hit home, and I'll get into the reason why in just a minute. But first, in this classic 1937 film, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, what do you remember the witch saying into the mirror? How many remember the line, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?" Well, it turns out that the witch actually said, "Magic mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?" How did we go from mirror, mirror to magic mirror? Now, when I was just a little kid, my mother used to read to me Snow White from an old Disney book that was in our family for decades. So I clearly remember mirror, mirror on the wall. So when I first learned about this Mandela effect, I refused to accept it. So I asked my mother if she can go pull out that old Disney book out of her closet. And I know she has it still because a year prior, she was cleaning out her closet and pulled out my old baby book as well as the old Disney book, and then we were reminiscing on my childhood. So fast forwarding to the present now, after I had asked her for the book, she looked at me and said, "Oh, that book. Harry, I haven't seen that book in over 30 years. It's been long gone since we moved in the early 90s. I was shocked at what I was hearing. She had no memory of looking at that book a year prior. So I finally convinced her to get the book. So she went upstairs, she started looking through her closet, and, to my surprise, the book was gone. It's like any evidence that you have to prove the Mandela effect incorrect mysteriously gets erased. Moving on. Now, I never seen The Matrix. I have heard of a Mandela effect in one of the scenes somewhere in the movie. However, that's not the Mandela effect that I'm referring to. When was the release date of The Matrix? Can you remember watching this movie in the theaters in 1999? If you answered yes, then you're correct. But how many of you remember the movie being released in 1996? I remember all my fellow students back in junior high imitating that classic scene when Neo was dodging the bullets. But in 1999, I was a sophomore in high school by then, so how can this be? And if we take a look back at the movie Speed 2, released in 1997, Keanu Reeves didn't return for his starring role. His character was replaced by actor Jason Patric, so it makes perfect sense that Keanu Reeves was absent for this movie if he was busy filming The Matrix in 1996. This next Mandela effect is shocking. We all remember the Twin Towers. How could we forget that tragic day on 9/11? But what building sat between the towers? Was it a Starbucks? A McDonald's? Or nothing at all? If you said nothing at all, or you're not remembering any building in between the towers, well, you're not the only one. But it turns out there was always a Marriott hotel that used to sit in the complex, and it's always been there since 1981 when it opened as the Vista International Hotel. So we all love this Christmas classic, Home Alone 2 Lost in New York, starring Macaulay Culkin, who played Kevin McAllister. Remember the scene at the airport when Kevin gets off the plane, looking around for his family, but they were nowhere in sight. He then looks out the window and is shocked at what he sees, realizing he's in New York and not Florida. But what stood out to Kevin indicating he's in New York? Clearly it was something particular. So what was it? How many of you can remember him staring at the Statue of Liberty? I know I do. I remember Kevin looking out the airport window, and as he notices the statue, the camera captures the shocked expression on his face. But strangely, that scene never existed. You would think he would notice a unique landmark that would actually stand out, but instead he realizes he's in New York by all the tall buildings around him. So let me get this straight. You're telling me there's no buildings in Miami where he was supposed to land that are more than 4 stories high? So why was that scene altered? Well, if we're able to see the Statue of Liberty, then we would be able to clearly notice the Twin Towers from that point of view, with a missing Marriott Hotel in between the two structures. But this hotel now shows up in all old videos and photos. So was this scene erased because of evidence that our timeline was altered? I'll let you be the judge. Now this next Mandela effect really changes how we look at human anatomy. What stands out in this image? Is it where the human heart is placed? For many of us, this image looks perfectly normal, with the human heart located on the left side of our chest. Well, actually it's not located on the left side. The human heart is actually located in the center of our chest. But since when? This doesn't seem right. Then why back in school did we place our hand over our heart on the left side of our chest for the Pledge of Allegiance? So before I discuss this last Mandela effect, I wanted to take a moment and debunk some Mandela effects with you ladies and gents that I found online, starting with the original 1983 Nintendo. So how many of you remember having to push the game cartridge all the way down, locking it into place in order for the NES to boot up? But according to these online rumors, you apparently never had to go through all that. All you had to simply do was insert the cartridge into the unit, then leave it as is, and the game would play no problem. Now, that's not how I remember it from my childhood, but there's many videos online of gamers playing the NES with the cartridge still inserted in the up position. So how can this be? Well, this is actually not a Mandela effect. If you had the 72-pin connector replaced inside your unit, then you no longer need the lock mechanism to have the game in the downward position. But if you're someone like me, who still has the original factory 72 pins, then the game won't play unless that cartridge is all the way down. The second Mandela effect that I debunked is from the courtroom TV show Judge Judy. How many of you remember Judy using a gavel? I know I do, but according to this Mandela effect, she never actually had a gavel. I know, we were all shocked to learn that after all these years, it was missing. But, well and behold, this isn't true. In the earlier seasons, there was in fact a gavel. I was able to find this episode of Judge Judy from the early 1990s with the gavel.
When you tease someone, that means you hold a carrot in front of them like this. Okay? And you say, maybe you can have it, maybe you can't.
No.
Now,
There
if
is
you are
never-
not, however, put
Your
your
Honor.
hand down. Don't you know when to shut up?
Now, this final Mandela effect still has me baffled to this day. Let's take a look at this action-packed film, Demolition Man. The ending of the movie left us hanging, since we never found out who Sylvester Stallone's daughter is. He mentioned having a daughter in the film, and Lenina Huxley, played by Sandra Bullock, made an attempt to look her up, but Stallone refused the offer. But, wait a minute, doesn't this ending seem a little off? If you remember the ending revealing that Sandra Bullock was Stallone's daughter, then you're not the only one. I vaguely remember, but it was Troy Evans, who played one of the cops, explaining that the computer had just made a match of Huxley's DNA with Stallone's DNA that they kept from when he was frozen. And if we take a look back at the scene when Stallone and Sandra Bullock were about to engage in cybersex, they had a sudden change of heart. So it makes sense that the writers for this film decided not to have Stallone and Huxley go through with it, since it was revealed in the ending that they were related. It would have made the sex scene even weirder than it already was, but for some reason this ending doesn't exist how we remember it. So I was thinking, maybe it was a deleted scene, an alternate ending possibly, or an overall TV release version. So I did some research online, and to my surprise, I read that the writers did plan to reveal in a subplot that Stallone's daughter was going to be the woman on the right who was part of the resistance led by Dennis Leary. But they scrapped it from the final cut. So, that was supposed to be the original ending. Shocking, isn't it? So if you enjoyed today's video, then don't forget to smash that subscribe button. Also, please like and share this content, because there will be plenty more in the future. And if you ever had your own personal Mandela effect, drop a comment, I'd love to read about it. And stay tuned for all our new videos that I'll be uploading. Same spooky time, same spooky channel.